Hi and welcome to Dramatic Drams' fourth pack. We've gone with a theme again this time, whereas last time was all about the rum and rum-influenced rum style theme. This time it's all about the barley. We're going to talk about a few different barley sources and the different influences that barley can have on a whisky. We'll kick straight off with the Glenmorangie Sauternes finished Nectar d'Or, which comes in, we don't usually or always show you these boxes, but they didn't used to come in such an attractive presentation box. This time they've upped their game a little bit, probably to up their price point, but the whisky's still good. We haven't seen many wine finishes in our whisky so far. Sauternes being a sweeter white wine, gives it that nice fruity but slightly tanniny nose. A very good starting whisky. It's not too complicated. It's actually matured in bourbon, which a lot are, and the Sauternes mention means finished. There aren't many full maturations done in non-bourbon casks. Occasionally you'll find a full maturation sherry, but this one's matured in bourbon and then finished in Sauternes. Therefore, very simple. Coconutty, some really light citrus notes, not too complicated. Very easy drinking, very nice. It's 12 years old, it's quite smooth. They've bottled it at 46%, which comes through a little bit, but you'd probably think it was less. Really nice entry-level whiskey, but there's a very nice white wine element amongst a really sweet coconut vanilla that makes this one, it'd be a great digestive or even a dessert whiskey. It's part of a range of three. Nectar d'Or, meaning sort of the golden liquid. You probably because of the fact that it's Sauternes and Sauternes casks create that nice sort of golden product, but also a little bit of a throwback to Gaelic. We'll move on. The Benromach Organic. This is where we really start our journey into different barleys. This is an fully organic production line to create this whiskey. The distillery itself is a very interesting one. We've seen this one before in the packs. I think it's probably our first double up. We had our Sassicaia finish in the first pack. This one is, it's not so much about the cask, but about that really fresh, crisp barley and malty notes you get. But on the nose, it's very interesting because there's a slight bitey meatiness to it. Nice fruits and darker fruits than you'd expect as well. Sultanas. And a slight red fruit element. But that tannin is there in this one as well. Almost like a tea, a real sort of green tea even, tannin quality. But to concentrate on the barley, the malt really comes through in this one. And a good quality whiskey requires a couple of good quality elements. You need a good quality water source, good quality barley, and then good quality casks. If you've got all of them, you've got a pretty good whiskey, and then it's all about just tweaking it to be exactly what you want. They've really gone for high quality organic malted barley, which releases that slightly spicy, not as spicy as a rye whiskey, but spicier, fresher note that on the nose and on the palate gives it the grassier quality. You might see more dry hay qualities coming through in a good quality barley. On the palate, it carries through very similar to the nose. It's bottled at slightly lower alcohol content than the first, 43%. But that actually is good for this one. It waters it down nicely so those underlying flavours come through. With cask strength and stronger whiskies, you often don't see or get those subtle qualities because the alcohol content in the ethers is to an extent drowning that out. Finish is not too long. It's not too warming, which is a bit disappointing. but in general, a really high quality whiskey. And it's got something that you probably don't see in many whiskies that don't concentrate on the quality of their barley. Very good. Moving right along, we have Kilchoman. It's an interesting pack this time because usually we finish on a peaty, smoky Islay, and the rest of them are a bit fruity, a bit softer from mainland Scotland, or even the islands that aren't peated. This time we actually have 3 Islas, 2 that are, one that is unpeated, one that has a slight peat influence. We've actually put it first because it's nice and sweet as well. It's Kilchoman Macchia Bay. Kilchoman do some very peated whiskies. Well, not as peated as some distilleries, but definitely noticeable. This is a nice introductory whiskey for people who may not have had peat before, might like to know it, might even like the smell of it, but not have wanted to translate that to taste because it's quite subtle. On the nose, you definitely get a bit of that peat, but there's a really nice toasted malt, like an Ovaltine or a Milo kind of quality. Peat's a little bit stronger on the palate, but it complements nicely because malted barley is by its nature quite sweet, and therefore it's good to contrast that with, a bit like how salted caramel works quite well, it's good to have peat and sweet in the same whiskey. When whiskey is made as a peated whiskey, the most common way to get peat in, there are a couple of alternatives, like if the water source runs through peat, you can get a bit of a peat influence. You get a smokier but not peaty quality if the distillery is by the water. This one, or as is most common, barley is peated by, during the germination process, or you trick the barley into thinking that it's germinating to make malted barley. During that process, you're drying it by burning peat, and the peat smoke goes into the malted barley, so you actually have a peated barley. The extent to which you want to do that is determined by the distillery. Some want as much peat as they can get in. Our next whiskey user has variants that are a good example of that. This one's just gone for subtlety. That nice, minerally herbaceous, sort of vegetative taste. Really nice and subtle, really good whiskey. Moving to our fourth, we have Bruichladdich Islay Barley, Rockside Farm, 2007. Bruichladdich do a series of the Islay Barleys that are from specific single origin farms. So all the barley that made this whiskey came from the same plot of land that's owned by the Bruichladdich distillery, which means you'll get a really concentrated and specific barley taste. It's 50%, strongest of our whiskies so far, and on the nose, it's just fantastic. It's got that real caramelized toffee, sweet cereals element. It's got a little bit of that Islay DNA about it. Tiny bit of saltiness. That'd be the distillery's location. As you can see, a very, very pale colour. No chill filtered, no colour in this. With these whiskies, we'd recommend, if you want to really bring out the flavour, to add a little bit of water. Just a few drops. Not because of the alcohol content, which is sometimes why you want to add water, but mainly because water releases a lot of the subtle flavours that are kind of locked down by the spirit. In this case, that's what you want to put the water in for, so definitely don't add too much, like 1 or 2 drops, but certainly worth it. That is a high quality whiskey. Oh, it's brilliant. On the palate, it's got that real warming quality. Could partially be, well, certainly partially because of the higher alcohol content, but also just the warm, sweet caramels that come out of the barley make it, it doesn't distract from, or it's not distracting, nothing else is going on the finish except that nice toasted barley, a tiny bit of that coconut vanilla, A little bit of citrus, but mainly it's a cereally, syrupy, nice finish. Top quality. Finally, to finish, usually we finish with a bit of a belter. This time, because of that nice barley element we want to have created in our lineup, we've gone with something a little bit softer. It's Bunnahabhain 12. Bunnahabhain do a few different varieties. They're not too varied in what they produce. It's a lightly peated Islay whiskey, so it's the third Islay we have lined up here. Traditionally, they were very lightly peated, whereas a Bruichladdich Octomore might go with up to 250, 260 phenol parts per million. This traditionally was around 3 or 4, hardly noticeable. Recently, they have increased that peat a little bit because of the popularity of peated whiskey, but it's still a subtle peat. Certainly not akin to the classic Lefroy 10, Lagavulin 16, sort of entry-level peated varieties from those distilleries on Islay. Certainly not that minerally Ardbeg. On the nose, it's light enough in peat for that barley element to still come through, which is what we've gone for here. But there is a nice peated element, sea spray, little tiny bit seaweedy in that kind of nice, savoury way. And on the finish, it's a really nice complement. It's actually a more subtle peat, more subtle smoke than came out in the last two. But the finish is stronger. Finish is better. It's higher than 46%, only just, but it still comes through as a really drinkable, easy whiskey. But it does emphasise that malty cereal flavour. Top quality. And it won't break the bank, as all our whiskies attempt not to. Great, great entry-level whiskey for someone who has not really experienced peat before and would like to give it a go. Well, that's all for this time. As I say, the influence is barley. If you'd like to try that real malty, cereally, and the kind of grassy elements that come through with high-quality malted barley that aren't distracted by other flavours, that's what we've gone for this week. Until next time, Slanja.